Hey guys, before we get into today's show highlighting Josh Dalley's top 10 running backs, I want to acknowledge the Black Lives Matter movement right now. Um, it is a monumental time in our society that we need to look at, listen with open ears, and understand that not a lot has changed since the civil rights movement in the 60s, and that it needs to, on a global scale, but specifically in the United States of America. That's what's going on right now. It is a movement, and I want to acknowledge that I support that movement. I was born in 1988. The riots in LA happened in 91 after the Rodney King incident. And here we are now at George Floyd, and so many more have taken place inside that time frame. So I want to acknowledge that and say that here at the Hot Take, we do support the Black Lives Matter movement.
You are now listening to the Hot Take podcast, brought to you by Full Time Fantasy. Here are your hosts, Stephen Taroni and Josh Dalley. Time to make it hot.
All right, let's get Josh in here. What's up, Josh? We just did the top 10 running backs, obviously, with Michael Hall. We're going to get into your top 10 here shortly. How you doing, brother?
Doing fantastic, man. Always happy to be on the pod with you, my friend, and talking with, our guests. And I want to say thanks to Mr. Hoff for joining the show, and excited to talk some running backs and maybe a little best ball chatter here.
Yeah, it's cool because now we'll be able to dedicate this time to your top 10 in its own episode. But we've been wanting to talk about best ball in one of these episodes. We haven't gotten around to it. We've had so much to talk about with the Hot Take Beat the Pros Dynasty League and, the things that we've been doing with that. So we're going to talk about best ball before we get into your top 10 running backs. And you were talking off air about Jarvis Landry. And we were just thinking about Jarvis Landry. I don't think there's been 1 year where it's he's probably going too high. I mean, I can't remember when I've said that about Jarvis Landry.
Right.
He's perpetually underdrafted in fantasy football. And in best ball, that's not even a receiver that you're considering, because what do we talk about in best ball? We want those volatile receivers, the boom or bust guys, the ones that you don't have to rely on every week, but you also have to pair them with the consistent guys. So talk to me about Jarvis Landry, what your thought process was today in one of your best ball drafts.
Yeah, doing over on the Next Fan Up podcast, have a best ball draft that we were kind of participating. A lot of us super fans were going through this today. And, Jarvis Landry is a guy that I love the consistency, man. I love the safe floor. He's the complete opposite of Odell Beckham. And it's just really intriguing because in this particular roster build, I'm drafting at the turn. So I had the first pick. So of course I took CMC, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But you get around to that 6-7 turn, and man, I already have 3 wide receivers on my team, and I can't believe that Josh Allen and Hunter Henry are there. And then with this particular squad, I don't have a quarterback or a tight end yet. So right. For me, it would have been a poor decision for me personally to take Jarvis Landry, but I almost regretted seeing when he was on there on the clock. And I know we were talking, you looked this up earlier, his average ADP is the 703 right now. And for me, I already have Godwin, Ridley, and Juju. And I mean, no matter what receiver you're taking there, in the second round, if you have, Galladay or something like that, this build where I have 3 wide receivers, I was so tempted to take a fourth with Landry,
right?
But I had already used so much draft capital on wide receiver that I kind of regretted it. And I wish I would have probably went a little more running back heavy, because I just feel when you have a roster that's largely made up of these boomer bust guys, whether you're getting guys like Robbie Anderson, who's kind of been a best ball darling, Ty Freak, who's obviously like, the ideal best ball receiver, guys in the past like Brandon Cooks that have kind of shown out, Kenny Stills, guys that really pay off, and guys that you go after late, even like Deshaun Jackson and those types. I mean, Jarvis Landry is like the perfect yin to that yang. I mean, he just feels like he's going to balance your roster out, and he's going to be there every week when maybe only one of those guys spikes for you. So for me, he's just a portrait of consistency. And I kind of thought that it would be nice to add him to this roster. And, in the end, I basically did end up taking, the tight end and the quarterback. So I wasn't kind of on the outside looking in, because, I mean, you know how it is when you're at the turn, my friend. If you don't get some of your guys, you never know. You could miss out on all the quarterbacks or all the tight ends before you know it. So plus, we talked about it before, when you're in that area where it's like, Hunter Henry and Evan Ingram, that's right after that. I mean, maybe Gronk is an option, but it gets a little scary. But I mean, dude, just, he's going to get you 80 catches no matter what. And even last year, he had 83 grabs in what was probably one of the worst offenses that we've seen. I mean, the Steelers and the Browns, man, were just like the portrait of futility last year. And I think a lot of that was Freddie Kitchens not wanting to turn some of the play calling over to Todd Monken. Why would you want to turn that duty over to a creative offensive mind like that? But,
right.
he's gone over 110 catches twice in his career. Most recently 2017 is last year in Miami. But I mean, these Miami teams weren't great. So, he's been doing this on bad teams for a while. So it's not out of he's not one of those guys that's going to put up like 13 or 1400 yards, but his knock, you probably remember this going into that 2017 season, the knock was, he just doesn't score enough. He never gets into the end zone, and he was only scoring like 4 or 5 touchdowns a year. And he puts up a nine touchdown season with the 112 grabs. I mean, dude, who wouldn't want that?
Season.
But Steve, going into the 2018 drafts, and
he was still going. Yep.
Matt, still getting disrespected, and
right.
it's kind of like that repeatedly. So, I mean, I just feel like 7th round, he's sitting there for you. I mean, the guy's pretty much, as long as he's going to be on the field, which that's the other thing. The guy is just an Iron Man. I mean, he plays every game,
right?
And it sounds like he got that hip surgery and everything kind of taken care of relatively early, so he really wouldn't have to worry about being ready in time, which you love to see. So, I mean, hey, if I can get him, 7th round, 80 catches in the bank, I'm all about that.
So he's going as wide receiver 31, like you mentioned, and coming off of that first season with Cleveland in 2018, he had a similar season to this past year. But he was the wide receiver 19. He had 81 catches, around the same reception total, but about 200 less yards and 2 less touchdowns. So that's wide receiver 19 compared to what he did last year in PPR, which was wide receiver 12. So if you were coming off of this wide receiver 19 season and being drafted as the wide receiver 31, that still would be underdrafted technically, right? I mean, but right. I could at least understand it. But no, he's coming off of a wide receiver 1 season in PPR, wide receiver 12 overall, and still just being disrespected. It's early. We're still in May. I think in August that'll go up a little bit, but it's not going to be wide receiver 12. It might not even be wide receiver 20 off the board. So in best ball, I hear what you're saying, because he plays every game. That's huge in best ball. Because you're going to get a solid floor and at least a body in every game. Now, to go along with those 3 receivers that you mentioned earlier, and Godwin, Juju, and Ridley, oh, yeah, I love that. And, you're talking about that turn, Josh. I definitely hear you. It's tough. Most of the time, you want to get in front of a run than at the end of a run. So if you have to take that tight end, you feel like, I hear what you're saying in that regard, and that's a choice. But you can go the other direction and say, I don't want to be forced into that, right? and I want to get the best player available. What's going to make my team really take that next level where I'm elite at this one position, and I know that. And that's when you take Jarvis Landry there, probably, if you're thinking about it that way. Of course, if you're going to miss out on tight end if 3-4 go in that long, you know what I mean? So it's the give and take with fantasy, but I think both are viable. It just depends on what you want to do. In best ball, sometimes you might lean the other way, and I know that, and that's what you're saying. You're going to get in that buyer's remorse, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, when you kind of weigh the options, if I wasn't so loaded at receiver, I would have absolutely pulled the trigger. But with the way that this draft board played out, I mean, I have Josh Allen, as the first quarterback in my kind of third tier of quarterback ranks. And I mean, that second tier is still a very expensive investment. You're looking at guys like, Dak and guys like, Matt Ryan went in front of Josh Allen, which I understand that's a potent offense, and I would have loved to have Matt Ryan as well. But to have some of that rushing upside and those rushing touchdowns with Josh Allen, I just felt like that was too hard to pass up. So for me, it was tough. I don't know. I'm not fully buying into Gronk having a major year after coming back from a year off. So he did go 7 picks later, though. I mean, he just went a few picks after Landry did. So
I read somewhere on Twitter today, it might have been I don't want to state the resource right now and not and not be correct. But I saw somewhere someone projected Rob Gronkowski for 999 yards.
Interesting.
Would you say over or under 999?
Man, I'd probably have to say under.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at, I mean, that's a crowd. First of all, they haven't traded OJ Howard yet.
You got to take that under all day if that was a bet.
I mean, that's a super crowded tight end room. Not to mention, you have my boy Godwin and then Mike Evans there on both ends. So that's a lot of people to feed. And, I know that they're probably going to, distribute some targets to the backfield as well. I mean, they don't really have a clear pass catching back there.
And the thing is with Gronk, I could just picture like 560 yards and 10 touchdowns.
Right. Right. See, and that's kind of what I'm thinking, more like 690 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Right. Something like that, like where it's a low, because that's going to be, this guy retired from the league. I don't think they want him doing George Kittle stuff. They want him just catching touchdowns, And I think that Brady's definitely going to use him, of course, on third down. He's going to have a role. I just can't see a 1,000-yard season. It depends, though, because the only way that happens is if things really just open up for this offense, and it is really next level, like we're talking about historic type of offense from Bruce Arians. You know what I mean? That's the only way that would happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just if there wasn't 3 good tight ends there in Tampa, I mean, Cameron Brate's still capable. Yeah. So it's if there wasn't that going on, I just think there's too many people trying to get a piece of the pie there right now until they move one of those tight ends, or they could cut Brate. I think the cap hit's pretty minimal on his deal, but moving Howard seems like the most probable. We have heard whispers of that, so it's something that's
most of those whispers coming from us. Who talk about it every episode.
Right. Yeah. We still would have loved to have seen that OJ Howard for David Johnson trade. That would have been fantastic. But can't blame Steve Keim for taking the deal he got, though.
I know, right? And but then you could have always said the infamous OJ for DJ trade.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would have worked out great for both teams, in my opinion. But I don't know. I don't want to use the term position scarcity, but when my options were Hunter Henry or Gronk or the field, as my tight end 1 in best ball, I love Jarvis Landry, but man, I'm not comfortable rolling with Gronk or the field for my tight end. So it is what it is, brother.
Well, let's get into these top 10 running backs. My number 1 running back was Christian McCaffrey in PPR. I assume that is yours as well.
Oh yeah, I mean I've seen on Fantasy Pros consensus that there has been a couple people that have ranked him number 2. I'm not sure what kind of witchcraft that is, but I mean the only thing I'll say is a Teddy Ball game coming into the picture. I mean he's that low A-dot guy, 7 yards a pass attempt. I mean that's his game. It's you coming off 107 and 116 catches out of the backfield. That Teddy Bridgewater comes in as like a bona fide game manager. I just don't see how CMC is not the number 1 in a PPR format. There's really nothing left to talk about with CMC. I mean, I know you guys discussed as well. So let's move on to number 2, who I have as Saquon. And is that how you guys shook out as well?
I think that Michael had Saquon at 2. I had Zeke.
Okay. Yeah. And see, I have Zeke at 3.
Yep.
The Giants offense is looking up. Say what you want about, Dave Gettleman and, maybe the way he's constructing his team, but I mean, hey, he's doing a decent job. And I think that offense is on its way up, and, 100 plus targets, completely reasonable, and 250 plus carries. I mean, as long as he can stay healthy, I think Saquon's definitely a great PPR threat. And I just think he's maybe going to be factored into the passing game slightly more than Zeke, but at the same time, I mean, these guys are like so close to being tied for 2, because with Zeke, that's a pure volume play, man. I mean, he's going to get those 300 carries. I mean, pretty much any way you slice it, Zeke's going to, as long as he plays, the 16 game schedule, I mean, he's going to have a top 5 season no matter what. Like he's not going to fail.
And we were talking about the 70 targets that he's getting. It was nice to see him get 70 targets, because the previous year I think he had something like, it was closer to 80. And we were like, wow, can he sustain that volume? And then he gets 70. So, I mean, even if Zeke gets 60, you're happy with the volume. We love 70 targets for Zeke, but you're happy with that kind of volume. And it's the same with Saquon Barkley in his rookie years, 120 targets, which was tremendous. I mean, like if you're going to get 120 targets a year, especially if you're the talent of Saquon Barkley, you have to be considered as the running back 1. My kind of thing, and we're nitpicking because 2 and 3, Saquon and Zeke, is pretty universal between the 3 of us, you, me, and Michael. Can Barkley sustain that workload in the passing game? And Daniel Jones, I'm not sure if we've seen that yet. So I think he averaged something like 5.5 targets per game with Daniel Jones. So that, projected out to a full season, you're going to be happy with that. So if that can happen, then yeah, he could maybe even beat out Christian McCaffrey. That would be the discussion at that point if he's getting targeted like that again.
Yeah, there's no question they're going to feed Zeke. I know they drafted CeeDee Lamb and they have, a trio of stud receivers there, very loaded. But I mean, that's how you keep it balanced. And the bonus, if you will, that Jason Garrett has left town. I don't know how much that's neutralized by the fact that Mike McCarthy has stepped in. Yeah. They kind of, a lot of similarities there between those two and their offensive woes or shortcomings, if you will.
Right. So, yeah, it seems like it's pretty standard across the board. Like he's going to want to feature Zeke no matter what. I really don't see. A lot of people are talking about Tony Pollard, but it's not going to matter when it comes to Zeke's workload.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I was going to say is maybe that's the only reason Zeke finishes maybe like just down the rung a little bit. Maybe he finishes as like RB5 because Pollard does get a little more run. I mean, that's one of the things that Rodgers was so pissed off about McCarthy was he just wouldn't give Aaron Jones the damn ball, and they kept siphoning carries off Jamal Williams, and they would even do that where they'd give like John Kuhn a carry or 2 back in the day. So, but that's just kind of one of the things that McCarthy has always done. So maybe he does lean a little more, heavily maybe, but still, I mean, I can't see it being more than like an 80-20 split. I mean, that even seems kind of ridiculously heavy for what we've seen.
You're right. Yeah.
And Zeke can handle it too. That's the thing is, Zeke can handle it. He's done that repeatedly. So, but yeah, that's pretty obvious that he's a pure volume guy that's going to keep him, way up towards the top of those RB rankings for sure.
So 3, I had Barkley, and then you had Zeke. And then who was your 4th running back?
Yes, this is a tough one for me. I ended up going with Kamara over Joe Mixon because Kamara just wasn't fully healthy last season. He's said that. Sean Payton has said that. I do think there's a big bounce back coming, but then you go and you look at the fact that he's hauled in 81 catches, which is weird. Exactly 81 catches the last 3 seasons. I mean, he's been extremely consistent. So if you're telling me that Kamara in his 3rd season in this offense was not fully healthy last year, and he even missed a couple games. And we saw Latavius Murray absolutely ball out in those games, but that's pretty good, man. I mean, if Kamara's catching 81 balls while he's missing time and beat up, then I'm glad that he's already come out and said he feels great and 100%. So I think a fully healthy Kamara in this offense just gave him the nod over Mixon for me, because I do expect Mixon to be a complete beast in this offense. I do think that the Bengals offense will be much more improved, with that Joe Brady, Joe Burrow action. Joe Burrow can definitely trust a guy like Joe Mixon coming out of the backfield, but I think it's just you have a rookie leading one offense and you have a first ballot Hall of Famer leading the other offense. And he's shown repeatedly that he's going to dump the ball off to Kamara time and time again when things get a little hot and heavy. So that's the only reason that I have Kamara above Mixon, is I just think there's a little experience factor there.
I love that you're framing this as Kamara over Mixon, and you haven't even mentioned Dalvin Cook.
Oh no, and I'll get to him in a moment. But
Obviously,
no, yeah, I think, and I don't know, I have some concerns there, but
yeah, no, that's
Mixon,
great. I mean, like for me, the way I'm looking at it is that there's that first tier of McCaffrey, Zeke, Saquon, and I put Dalvin Cook in that tier. So I originally had Kamara where you have him, which would have been really interesting, but I moved him back one and I put Cook in that range because of the 250 plus carries. And but I do believe with Kamara, because I have him at 5 right behind you, that I mean, the 81 catches you love to see. You're going to give a playmaker like this 80 catches and this is how they use him. They give him that kind of work in the passing game. I think this is going to be a big year for the Saints. I said it earlier. I think, Drew Brees, he doesn't have many more years. I mean, this could be the last one. I'm looking at the Saints to have a huge season behind Michael Thomas and behind Kamara. And if that happens, I mean, he, again, like the guys that we've talked about so far, he could even be the top back. I mean, if he is that type of player, and I love that you have him at 4.
Yeah. Just, one last thing about Kamara is that the opportunity for him to maintain the targets. I mean, you saw how many targets Michael Thomas got. Like, that's, he's going to get fed. And they bring in Emmanuel Sanders. But I don't think Emmanuel Sanders coming in has any impact on Kamara whatsoever. So I do think that they'll continue to feed him. And I think that's one change that you're going to see in the Bengals offense this year with Joe Mixon. That workload's been ramped up. He's been getting more carries throughout the course of his first 3 seasons. Of course, he didn't have the backfield all to himself in 2017. It was, a lot of Gio Bernard and whatnot, but there's still the opportunity for him to really expand his role in the passing game. And you want to look at something comparable, look at the way that this LSU offense, and I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm wrong for using this as a comparison, but because it could be arguably like maybe the best college passing attack we've ever seen. But, the way they use Clyde Edwards-Helaire and the way that I think the Bengals could use Joe Mixon, definitely appealing to me, man. I mean, and you think about, how young Joe Mixon still is. He's only 23. I mean, he's only 2 years older than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So he's still got a lot of miles to go before he's getting worn out. And I feel like that's where the opportunity is right there, is in the passing game. I mean, if you go back and watch Joe Mixon's receptions from 2019, I mean, he just looks electric when he gets the ball out of the backfield like that. So I'm very excited for that. Maybe I have Mixon a little too high as being a top 5 guy, but I'm really relying on that offense to kind of evolve and take a huge step forward. I kind of like what the Bengals have done. They did have a lot of injuries last year, and let's not forget, like, they lost their first round pick last year, who was their left tackle. And he's going to be back this year. AJ Green didn't play a damn snap. So that's going to be kind of nice. Defenses won't be able to really key in on Mixon as much. So they kind of, there's other people they have to worry about. And now they have this young gunslinger in Burrow. So I'm very excited for some of those things. And that's the only reason I have Mixon, above Henry. And for Henry, same thing as Zeke. It's that volume, it's that workload. I think that there's 2 scenarios here in Tennessee. There's going to be scenario A. Henry comes out. He's an absolute monster. He wins the rushing title again. He's scoring, 18 touchdowns, and he gets re-signed. But then there's that other scenario where he does all this, where the Titans completely just run him into the ground on this franchise tag and make him earn every bit of that $10 million. And then maybe it's Darrington Evans' backfield next year. You never know in today's NFL. We talked about this a little bit last week, but yeah, it's, Mixon, I think, is going to still offer more in the passing game, even though he has kind of a limited track record in producing. Only 43 catches 2 years ago, 35 last year. But that's where he really has the chance to take this leap coming into this 2020 season. Whereas Henry, hopefully it's not more of the same. I'd like to see, I want to call him Arthur Smith, but the Titans offensive coordinator, I really like what he's been doing. So I'm hoping that they can get Henry a little bit more involved in the passing game. That would be nice to see, because he like Mixon isn't like, they're 2 completely different people. I don't want to like mistake that I'm comparing their abilities with the yards after catch, but they're 2 completely different people. But Henry is that guy that if he's getting the ball out of the backfield like that, people are scared to tackle him, whereas people can't tackle Mixon. Like, he makes it impossible. So It's very exciting to see kind of the difference, and hopefully they can both take a step forward. But I think Mixon makes up so much ground over Henry, with an increase in rushing attempts and an increase in catches and targets as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on Mixon, man. I have him at 6.
Nice.
And we were talking about, having just an increased workload in the passing game. 60 targets, talking about earlier, would be ideal. I think it's okay to use that LSU, season kind of as a sample, because, Zach Taylor is going to want to make it very comfortable for Burrow. And, I think it's, it's almost like the elephant in the room. Why is Joe Mixon not being used in the passing game? I think it finally comes together. Like you said, he's going to be 24 coming into the season. So it's time. He's had a few years under his belt now. And he's ready to go. So I think he's primed. I think a lot of people are kind of sensing that, because this offense can be very good. Like you pointed out, like with AJ Green, if he can be even 70% of AJ Green, that's still a very good receiver for Joe Burrow. And then you have John Ross still there, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins. It's a lot of weapons. I mean, this is a very good receiver corps. So, let's see what they can do with it. I think Mixon, 60 targets, I think it's realistic. And if he gets there, then you're talking about him being in this conversation of top 6, top 5 back.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And that's, dude, I'm excited that you have Mixon as your number 6.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I put the you saw the hot take Twitter page. I have Mixon as the banner now. And I
Oh,
didn't
that's
even know that.
fantastic.
I didn't know you had him this high. So I think it's time. It's time for the Joe Mixon breakout.
Yeah, is it really a hot take, or is it just like this? It's his time. Like, we'll see, man. We'll see.
So that was 5, and Dalvin Cook has to be at 6, right?
Well, I have Henry at 6.
Okay, got it.
I just talked about Henry, so I'll transition into Cook.
Okay, Cook
and I don't know
all the way down at 7. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys talked about this. I mean, he is a full year older than Mixon. He did get more use in college, which I know really isn't that important. I really shouldn't even have said that, because that's it's not even, it really doesn't bear any factor. But I mean, the dude was beat up all the time in college. He was injured all the time. And coming into his 4th season, just like Mixon, last year was the first time he ever had more than 200 carries. And I mean, they ran the ball a lot, and it was pretty obvious with some of the changes on the offensive coordinator side of the ball at the end of 2018 that's what Mike Zimmer wanted to do. And, that's what Kevin Stefanski did, was, run the ball. And I mean, that's absolutely out of instruction by his head coach that was the game plan. But, kudos to him for staying healthy all year. But dude, still, in his first 3 seasons, I mean, this guy's averaging 9 games a year for you. So, 4 games his rookie year. He played, 11 games, 2018. So for that, the chances, and I've looked at a couple, whether you're using Inside Injuries or one of these other, medical websites, when you look at the myriad of injuries that Dalvin Cook has had to deal with, the chances of recurrence for him are in like the 96th, 95th percentile on all of these sites. Like, so if you think that I am going to invest, a first round pick in Dalvin Cook, it is
a top 4 pick.
It is not happening. And,
right.
And I hate that, because in the past, I've said that, hey, people are always injury prone until they prove they're not. But I mean, hey, he put it together for most of the season last year.
Yes, 14 games.
Right. And, he did great. I mean, what was he at? 4.5 yards a carry. It's still decent. I mean, he's been declining in the yards per carry department every year. But I thought it was nice to see Cook actually get, some run in the pass game. With actually getting, 63 targets last year.
Well,
he was pretty efficient.
That's the thing with Cook, is he is efficient. And in 2018, when he played 11 games, you liked what he gave you in those games. And even in his rookie season, when he played 4 games, you were very excited about what Dalvin Cook was about to be. So then we finally got it in 2019. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think over the course of his career, though, he has been very consistent and efficient when he's on the field. So if we get 14 again, I think we're happy. But it's funny, Josh, I have him at the back end of my tier 1, right? So let's say the top 4 there. But let's say I'm at pick 4 and those 3 backs are off the board. I'm probably leaning towards Kamara. I'm leaning towards Kamara because I want the upside of, I think he can be the number 1 back in the league with 80 receptions. Like, we're thinking, I think he can get around 80 receptions again. So if he gets that, I'm happy, especially because I think he'll get, more carries. I don't think that they're going to lean on Latavius Murray. I would go Kamara just because I want that upside. But the reality is, if Cook can give you 250 carries plus be used in the passing game, and plus the way that the Vikings want to use the running back in the red zone, it is incredible value. Not that the Saints don't use Kamara, but just for comparison's sake, I think that's the argument for Dalvin Cook being a top 5 guy. But then I see your side completely.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point by ranking him this low, which I'm not really trying to make a point, but the thing I don't understand is why he's up at 3 or 4 on a lot of people's rankings in PPR because he has to do what he did last year and then some. But
Right.
he only had 2 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons. And then last year he went off for 13. Do I think that that's normal? No, I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. He's probably going to get 8 or 9 scores, especially if he does repeat 14 or 15 games played. I'm not trying to call the guy a pussy or anything. I mean, running, running back is like the hardest position to play from a physical beating standpoint, I think, in any sport, so it's, it's absolutely takes a toll on your body. There's no doubt about it, but he has to deliver close to those 13 touchdowns, and he has to go over those 1,100 yards. And that's the thing with 250 carries. Usually if I'm spending a top 5 pick on a running back, I'm expecting 250 carries to be the norm. And I'm expecting, north of, 1,250 yards,
Right.
not just shy of, or just ahead of 1,100. So it's,
and there's also the Alexander Madison factor, which exists. So he's still going to get 100 carries. Maybe he gets used a little bit more. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibilities.
yeah, it would have been nice to see Madison stay healthy when Cook went down.
Yeah.
Would have really liked to seen him kind of, get a full workload, over a couple weeks while Cook got back and healthy again. But hey, it was Mike Boone season before we all knew it.
Right, for better or worse. So let's get into your number 8 back, and let's try to go a little quicker here with the last 3. Who is your number 8 back?
Yeah, number 8, I have Austin Eckler.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Kind of for the same reasons like we were talking about with Jarvis Landry. I mean, this guy just came off of, based on how your league scores, he was a top 5 back. Some leagues he was, a top 3 back. So, you and I have talked about this before on the show. People have the stigma that Tyrod doesn't throw it to the running backs, and he doesn't really like to throw to the tight ends. He still throws to the running backs. We saw when LaShawn McCoy was in Buffalo, he had those seasons where he was still hauling in 50, 59 catches.
Right.
And I mean, that's going to be a massive drop in Eckler's value if he gets into 50 and 60. But
Right.
I think it's going to be a lot more of what we saw last year. Maybe not to that extreme, but then again, I'm not ranking him as a top 3 or top 5 guy.
Yeah,
but,
I don't think the pass catching goes away for Eckler.
Well, yeah, they paid the dude.
Yeah.
So I mean, they still have Justin Jackson, who I like, and I like that they brought in another running back. So there's still some competition there, but
Josh Kelly.
Yeah, and I mean they're not asking Eckler to carry the load. He'll probably have an uptick in carries now that Gordon is gone. I mean, why wouldn't you give him a chance with how well he was, with how well he performed last year? But yeah, man, Austin Eckler at running back 8 in a PPR. I still think he's going to haul in a lot of catches.
Yeah, I've drafted Josh Kelly in 3 spots already in 2 dynasty. So both of my rookie drafts so far, and then in the best ball league that I'm in with you. So I have 100% Josh Kelly, which means that I have Austin Eckler a little bit lower. You have Eckler the highest of me, Michael, and Michael. So he had him at 10 though. He had him at 10. I just don't have him on my top 10.
Yeah, I was about to call him Josh Gordon, and I knew that wasn't right. So, God, thanks for the save.
So yeah, I think that the pass catching isn't going away. I wonder how he's going to be used on the ground. I mean, he should be the lead dog there. So it seems like what's going to happen is he's going to lose some targets, but he's going to get more carries. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, like he's still going to be used in the passing game. He's not going away there at all. So in PPR, he's definitely a great play. You're just you're just going to have to pay for him this year. If you want Austin Eckler, you're going to have to pay for him, and
there's no contract holdouts, siphoning value away for us this year. So you got to pay up a little bit, but he could still be a big value, man. We could still get a couple rounds.
Yeah, let me see what his ADP is actually real quick, and we'll play a little this or that before we move on. Let's see, 205.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay, so you're on the clock.
Yeah, I'll look up this current best ball that I'm in right now, and he went phenomenal.
Okay.
Oh, he went 107. That's why I was looking in the second round.
Wow. Okay, I'm not even going to talk about that. So let's say you're on the clock. PPR, Chris Godwin or Austin Eckler.
Man, if it's PPR, I'm probably if it's second round and if I already have a running back, I'm probably going Godwin. But if I already have a receiver, I'm probably going Eckler.
Okay, all right, yeah. I think I'm going Godwin most times there. Let's say Julio drops a little bit because he's going at the 202. Would you take Julio or Eckler?
I'd probably still take Julio there. I know Julio's like 31, but it's I'm still very comfortable with his production.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and Miles Sanders is actually in ADP ahead of Austin Eckler at this point. He's at the 203 right behind Nick Chubb, according to Fantasy Football Calculator in PPR. So Miles Sanders' hype is definitely getting out of control. Eckler was your 8. Who was your 9?
I actually have this one. That speaking of Miles Sanders, that was so tough. I couldn't decide between Drake at 9 or Sanders at 9, and I ended up going with Drake.
Okay.
And it basically just because of what we saw last year, he was absolutely magic when he came into the Cardinals offense. And to be honest, he was good when we saw him play in Miami. So
Yeah.
when he was given a chance, that is, just put him on that long list of players that had their fantasy value completely tanked by Adam Gase. But old Crazy Eyes is gone, and he doesn't have to contend with that. David Johnson is gone, and I think that's kind of the point that a lot of people are building this high ranking on, is that Kenyan Drake was doing all this when David Johnson was, I would say relatively healthy. So it wasn't like David Johnson was sitting there on IR. Chase Edmonds is still there, and they did bring in Benjamin, but we look at how explosive Drake was, and just kind of, it really didn't matter who the running back was in Arizona. Early last year, David Johnson looked great. He looked like the guy that we remembered, and then he got hurt.
Right.
And then Chase Edmonds come in, and he absolutely explodes. And they make the deal for Drake. He doesn't even, I think he's on the team for like 3 or 4 days. It just balls out.
Right.
So it could be more a function of the offense, and that's fine with me, man. If we're going to get more of this running back production, so Arizona RB1 equals a fantasy RB1, yeah, absolutely. I'll take Kenyan Drake as top 10.
Oh man, you're really talking to me here, because I have Kenyan Drake at 9 as well.
There you go.
And I'm big on Chase Edmonds, because I think that he has standalone value, just because I think that he can still be used. He's not going to give you week-to-week value, but I think he could still be on any roster, as even if you want to take him with your last pick, you still take that and see how they use him. And then, if they're not at all, then you can dump him. But, he's obviously a great handcuff at this point. But, you said it. The RB1 of the Cardinals, and that's who Kenyan Drake is. So as long as that is the case, I'm with you. I want every part of that, so I have him at 9 as well.
Yeah, another guy. I don't think that big uptick in targets and receptions is completely, being irresponsible. I mean, I think he's another guy like Mixon, where maybe he could get 70, 75 catches. I mean, you saw last year, in 8 games with the Cardinals, he had 28, and he only started 10 games total, and most of those were with the Cards, but he just didn't get a lot of run. He looked great early in the season, and he still hauled in 50 catches split between basically starting 10 games. So it's pretty impressive, man. So I'm really looking forward to a beefed up passing attack, and some beefed up passing game numbers from Drake as well.
Yeah, and then your number 10 is Miles Sanders.
Guilty, yes. And I mean, had the Eagles landed Carlos Hyde, we probably wouldn't be talking. I'd probably I don't know. It'd be tough, but I can't. When you look, and I guess instead of talking about Miles Sanders, because the guy does everything well. And, this time last year, Doug Peterson was talking about going against the grain. Like what we've always seen Doug Peterson do is use a committee approach. And he mentioned, I think we finally got our guy, like our lead guy. And, Jordan Howard did great until, he hurt his shoulder. And then that's when we kind of saw Miles Sanders take off. So I don't think it's unreasonable to see a repeat of his performance. I mean, he's just a phenomenal pass blocker. He's an efficient receiver out of the backfield. But for me, what this top 10 ranking came down to, if I can be completely honest, it's really not anything to do with Miles Sanders. It's just that him, Drake, and Nick Chubb were all kind of clustered in this area. And I'm not comfortable putting Nick Chubb as a top 10 running back. I know that the dude finished second in rushing basically last year. At least he was, about to get the rushing record until he got like 8 carries in the last week or whatever it was, which was ridiculous. You got to be pissed if you're Nick Chubb, if you had a shot at the rushing title and you basically weren't even given a chance. But right. Long story short, once Kareem Hunt came back after his suspension, but he was producing like an RB2. And, RB2, even in a 10-team league, I mean, that's outside the top 10. I mean, easy math. I did that in my head. But that's not a guy I'm comfortable putting at 10. So I was just a little more – I felt like Sanders was a little more safe. But who knows? They could sign Devontae Freeman next week. And, maybe I'm just completely ripping these rankings apart.
Well, I mean, you're talking about my boy, which you're offending me in my boy Nick Chubb. So I really don't appreciate that.
My bad.
I have him at 8, and that was Michael's very surprised by that too. I'm sticking with it because Nick Chubb is a great NFL running back, and he's going to continue to be that even with Kareem Hunt. In my opinion, that's all. I mean, I think that people are seeing that the back half of last year. I get it. Kareem Hunt came in, and he's going to be used. He can still be a top 30 running back. And he will be, but Nick Chubb is still going to be used. He's still going to get 270 carries. So I have him at 8. I had Drake at 9, just like you. And I didn't put Miles Sanders on here. I put Le'Veon Bell.
Okay.
I know that got Michael earlier, but I just think the volume, man. I think he's going to keep getting the workload. And then if they can actually stretch the field a little bit, with an improved offensive line, which I think they really improved, drafting. I think his name is Mekhi Becton. I think that was a great pick for this team. So I think that he'll have more opportunity this year. So I'm ready for Le'Veon Bell to have a bounce back season.
Yeah, I already told you how I feel about Adam Gase.
Oh yeah.
So that's my one concern, and then. What really scared the shit out of me was when they signed Frank Gore. Right. And I mean, dude, say what you want about Frank Gore, but every single year, we talk about, we laugh about it when he signs this 1-year deal with whoever it is. And then all he does is get 30% of the carries and we get pissed. So, I mean, I don't know, man. Coaches seem to love the guy, and he does everything well. He's another guy like Miles Sanders. Like, he does everything well, and he's been doing it for so long that I feel like it's a thing where coaches can trust Frank Gore, and that's the only reason that I'm not high on. Well, not the only reason. Adam Gase is public enemy number 1 for fantasy owners.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, that's really because, I mean, dude, you can lump him in there. You get to Drake, Sanders, Chubb. These guys are all tough, man. They're all really tough to kind of rank because I feel like it is, league specific. But when we are talking PPR, dude, I hope so. I mean, if they don't use Le'Veon Bell more, then they just kind of wasting their money. But
Well,
It's weird.
if he gets 66 receptions again, and let's say that 789 yards just improves to around 1,000, and then those 3 touchdowns go to 6 or 7. I mean, that's realistic. And if he does that, he's going to be around that top 10.
Mm-hmm.
That would put him around that top 10 because he was 16 last year in PPR because of the 66 receptions again. So just keep that there. No 1 touchdown that department, 461 yards. So I mean, the thing was with Adam Gase is not just that he doesn't give the ball to his talented guys when he should. The volume that we want, it's the situation as well. He doesn't put his players in position to.
Oh, absolutely.
And that it was hard to do that with Le'Veon Bell this year, especially with the offensive line, which was really, really shitty.
Yeah.
So that just doesn't work with a guy like Bell who sits in the backfield for a little bit to see what's going on. But it can work in a downfield situation where he has that space, and if they can work that left side with the left tackle that they brought in, it can work. Denzel Mims, if they use him, Brashard Perryman, these guys are built to stretch the field, so it really can work. I don't know. Frank Gore is a good point because he's just going to get 150 carries, and that's
right.
He's going to do that to you. So it's a great point.
It is though. It's Le'Veon Bell can be kind of like a polarizing topic because like people want to paint him as like a knucklehead or an idiot because he kind of like took a L on like however many millions from that holdout with Pittsburgh, but and he's got a rap album and whatever, dude. Like he went to Michigan State, so like I love the kid. Like when he was at Michigan
right.
State, that was like that was the most talented backfield I've ever seen in East Lansing, and they just didn't give him the ball enough. And it was like, so when the Steelers drafted him, I'm like, of course, that's a total Steelers pick. And then he just explodes. But if you're Le'Veon Bell, dude, you have to be not only frustrated that like this time last year, your head coach is like, oh, I didn't want to sign the guy. And then, so that really paints like an awful picture. And then the fact that they really never seem to like adjust their scheme at all to fit like his patient,
right.
I mean, because he's gonna sit there and he's gonna kind of bounce a little bit and then attack a hole. Right. And they really just kind of ran the same stuff that we see Adam Gase offenses running. But I don't know, man. I've never seen one coach ride one successful season with like one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time to so many head coaching gigs. It's kind of ridiculous, but I digress, man. I guess the last thing that I wanted to say was my concern with Nick Chubb, and I didn't mean to come in here and hurt your feelings, bro.
You did,
but and I realized it's too late for that. So I want to back this up with some hardcore evidence, because I love Nick Chubb, dude. Like, and I get the Browns' approach by tendering Hunt with a second round tender. They could have done the original round, but when you compare like the talent and the compensation level, I mean, some team was going to swoop in and offer Kareem Hunt a deal if they didn't do that. So, I mean, I was pretty smart by Cleveland, I feel like, to do that. So you kind of had to bring him back on a second round tender. Right. And then at that point, I mean, that's where all the running backs get drafted, coming out. The premier running backs are going in the second round in every draft now in the last few years. So, but once Hunt came back, I mean, Chubb was just steadily from week 3 on getting 20 plus carries a game. And once Hunt came back, 16, 15, 17, 15, and then of course the infamous 13 carries when you're in a hunt for a rushing title, to finish just shy of even 1,500. I mean, Jesus. Like, come on, Freddie Kitchens, at least get him to 1,500.
Right.
But, he was in there blowing out like, 5 yards a carry last year. I mean, Nick Chubb is a stud, dude, but there's just so much concern for me between Kareem Hunt getting some carries, and especially in PPR, man. I think Kareem Hunt is just an awesome PPR asset to get kind of in those mid rounds. Whereas I'm just a little bit leery on Chubb being in my top 10. So that's all. I just wanted to kind of like not sugarcoat it.
Well said, man. I think that's the thought process with Nick Chubb, and I get it. I really do. I can see that. We know that target share is going to be limited. We already know that, so going into your drafts, you have to consider that. If you're in the PPR league, do you want to take Nick Chubb, who I have above Kenyan Drake, or do you want the guy who's going to get the work in the passing game, right? So I get that. But, like I said, 1,500 yards, if he can give me, even if he gives me 1,400 yards, I think those touchdowns go up a little bit based on how often they were in the red zone and how often they failed getting Chubb into the end zone. I think that goes up a little bit this year. So I'm thinking that he's still the same back with, maybe 275 carries. But still, that workload you love, as your RB1.
I know. It just sucks that Kareem Hunt's even there. I just would love to see. But, who knows? This time next year, it could be Nick Chubb having the backfield to himself. That would be fantastic because he certainly knocked the ball out of the park there in the first 11 weeks of the season last year.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like if the thing is that I said before Kareem Hunt got there is that Nick Chubb is going to have to lose this job. Like he's going to have to lose carries and not be getting that 15, 16, 17 carry games by not playing well. That's the only thing that's going to stop this. So do you believe that Nick Chubb will continue to play well? Because they'll still give him that 16, 17 carry game. And as long as they do that, that's when, you have an opportunity for a top 10 discussion. But if Kareem Hunt just plays outstanding and they have to have, him on the field, I just don't see that happening. That's what that's where my thought process is. It's like they're not going to want to take carries away from Chubb or snaps from Chubb. I think they're going to do a good job of using both of them this year, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. So if they both use both correctly, then I don't think there's any question that one of the most talented backs in the league could be a top 10 back.
Yeah, and let me paint the silver lining after I shit all over your hopes and dreams. In the 7 games that the Browns gave Chubb 17 carries or less, the record was 1-6. So,
right.
That says quite a bit about, what they're able to do when he's having success.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Titans with Derrick Henry. It's going to be a game script. You have to worry about that too, because if they're down in games, I can see that's when Chubb will lose snaps. If they go into a shotgun package and Kareem Hunt is on the field and things are working, that's when things will, get hairy, and that could be quite a bit. But we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of different scenarios there. You have to. Can I count on this guy, being my RB1? With Chubb, I think he's still that guy. And we should also mention that, you and I, my friend, are going to be on the Scott Fishbowl Podathon, which I was very happy to get my Scott Fishbowl invite. And I am looking forward to seeing you there as well.
A couple of conference finalists here.
That's right. Yep. Dude, I didn't even lose a game until like week 15 or something. And I was like, I could have went undefeated, man. I was so surprised. That team really, that was my best team of all my leagues. And it was probably one of your better teams too.
Yeah. Luckily, being snake bitten by the Andrew Luck pick and Antonio Brown picks, you'd think that would take a team pretty quickly, but luckily, I blew all my fab early, and we'll save this for when we have Scott Fishbowl 9 champ Gary Haddow on the show. But man, if it wasn't for Mustache Mania and DJ Chark with all my fab money, you never think that anyone's going to say, "Boy, that Jacksonville passing attack saved my season." Right. But it did indeed, man. It kept me very competitive after starting off 0-2. And then I went on a major win streak, and next thing you know, man, like me, you, Rad, Thad, and Gary were all in the conference finals, and of course Gary took it down, and the rest is history, man. So I can't wait to have him on and talk about that little sneak peek for the listeners.
Most definitely, yes, sir. All right, yeah. On behalf of Josh Dalley, my name is Steven Tironi. Thanks for listening. This has been the Hot Take Podcast.